Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us again for one of our webinars. Quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Joe Gelb, as Herzl reminded me. Suite Solutions, our main vision is to enable you to engage your customers by providing quick access to relevant information. So what I'd like to say, as you'll soon find out because I'm going to say it right now, is that often we talk about data and information architecture and tools and dynamic publishing and all kinds of cool stuff. But when it comes right down to it, the goal that we're all trying to do with our documentation, with our content, and our strategy is trying to get information the best way possible, the most effective way possible to our customers, to give them quick access to information that they need to meet their goals that they're trying to achieve at that moment. We help customers with XML-based authoring and publishing solutions, data, as well as other types of XML. Our flagship platform is called SuiteShare, which we'll speak about towards the end of the presentation. We're blessed to have a large breadth of customers and space that we work in, and that has contributed over time to the expertise that we bring to bear for our customers. So I'd like to turn it over to Mark, who will introduce himself.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Mark Baker. My company is Analecta Communications, and we provide services in the fields of content creation, content engineering, and content strategy, with the emphasis on what I call the every page is page one information design model. And associated with that is an approach to content engineering, and to content strategy, and to information architecture, which is really built on a bottom-up approach as opposed to the more traditional top-down approach, which, as I hope to be able to illustrate in this session, has some limits, particularly given the way that readers are attempting to access and use information today, a way that's not new, but has been very much accelerated by the web. So I think with that we can move on to the presentation. So, Joe, are you going to give me? There we go. Just got the show my screen button. That was what I was waiting for. So, well, you've just seen this one. So, let me talk very briefly about the book. Every page is page one, topic-based writing for technical communication of the web. The emphasis in the book is very much on information design. In many cases today, topic-based writing, the phrase is used to mean almost simply a different way to approach the writing task. The emphasis that I put on it in the book is a different way of presenting information to the user, which is based on some very important changes in how users are accessing content today, and the ways in which the greater access to information that the web makes possible has changed readers' expectations and their level of patience and their and even their skill set in navigating information sets. So we've always known that readers don't exactly sit down and pick up a technical manual and read it from cover to cover. That's not news to anybody. John Carroll, when he did his research that led up to his book, The Nuremberg Funnel, which was responsible for introducing the concept of minimalism into technical communication, he observed this behavior even in a laboratory setting. These were experiments that were done in the 1980s where subjects were observed in laboratory session, so they didn't have access to any materials that weren't already in the room. certainly didn't have access to the web because it basically didn't exist at that point. And what he observed was, despite the fact that they had set up their experiment so that people had access to a manual and were asked to do a certain number of tasks, what they found was that learners often skip over crucial material if it does not address their current task-oriented concern, or skip around among several manuals composing their own ersatz instructional procedure on the fly. So what he observed over and over was that even in that limited environment, readers did not use the content in the fashion it was designed to be used. Instead, they were very task-oriented in what they were doing. They had a particular concern in mind, and they went hunting for that information according to their own devices, and often sort of almost made stuff up out of the various pieces that they found. Carroll described this as goal-directed reading, and he talked about how the way in which readers take a goal-directed approach, that is, they're directed by their own individual goals when they read technical material, made it impossible to anticipate correctly how instructional material should best be organized. So Carroll said, many sequencing problems reside not in the material alone, but in the learner's use of it. When people refer to instruction opportunistically in support of their own goal-directed activities, it becomes difficult or impossible to predict what sequencing will be appropriate. In other words, what Carroll is saying is there is no one perfect organization of content that is going to work for everybody, because each person comes at it in an individual goal-directed sense. And so there is no perfect sequence. Now, what Carroll did in his experiments was to experiment with non-sequenced approaches. One of the experiments he did was to create a set of what they call guided learning cards. And these were presented in a stack beside the machines at the beginning of the session, and at the end of the session they went through them to find out what order the cards were in the stacks that the users had been using throughout the experiments. And they found that every stack was in a different order, really confirming the idea that there is no optimal order for presenting information. He described this approach as radical then. It is, of course, completely mainstream now. The concept of creating unsequenced material is radical in 1990, commonplace today. Most of the material we consume is essentially unsequenced. It's on the web, or we go directly to an individual page. And the web certainly is not sequenced. If you look at a site like Wikipedia, it's an encyclopedia. We're used to encyclopedias having a sequence, an alphabetical order sequence. But if you look at Wikipedia, it has no sequence. You search it, you follow links within it, but there is no sequence to it. This is an environment which I refer to as every page is page one. So when I talk about every page is page one, first of all, I mean that this is a fact about how people use content on the web particularly, but as I'm going to argue, not only on the web. In a secondary sense, it is an information design pattern which I'm going to describe and which the book describes, that is designed to accommodate the fact that people work in this way, people read in this way. So every page is page one means essentially this. Readers arrive at an individual piece of content. They come in via research. They come in via a recommendation on a social network, via a link from another page because they referred to it, by a posting in a forum. and they come directly to the individual page of interest. There is no continuity from where they were before, which means that every link essentially leads to a new page 1. Whether it was written as page 1 or not, it is page 1 for the reader who has just arrived at it from wherever they were before, and we have no way of knowing where that was. So it is a new page 1. This is true even when we're dealing with content that is not on the web. And the reason for that is twofold. First, people are so habituated to searching that even if you have an information system that's not on the web, people will still turn first to search. The Norman Nielsen group has studied this and find that we are becoming more and more search-oriented all the time, more and more dominant in how we look for information. We turn to search first and foremost. The secondary reason it's true is that people are searching the web even when they are consuming media that isn't on the web. 80% of people in North America, apparently, according to the studies I've read recently, will search the web while they are watching TV. So if you're watching a TV show and something is mentioned or you see a scene that interests you, you'll pull out your phone and you'll do a search to figure out what was it I just saw there, or is that a real thing? We do the same thing when reading books. I often find myself using Google Maps when I'm reading a book just to follow along. The places mentioned or the routes taken. We do it when reading billboards. That's why there are QR codes on billboards to invite us to move from the billboard to the web. We do it when we're reading menus. And if somebody is in a browser reading your help system that might be captive to your individual application, if there's a concept or a word in there that they don't understand, and especially if there is no link on that concept or word in your system, the first thing they're likely to do is highlight it, right-click, and choose Search Google for. They're already sitting in a browser. To them, they're not really even thinking about whether I'm in so-and-so's help system or whether I'm on the web. I'm in a browser, the place I live most of the time, and within my browser I can search for things. This is really important because it means that there is nothing holding your reader in your content anymore. It is very, very easy for the reader to go elsewhere, almost at a moment's notice. Formerly, if somebody was sort of sitting down in their chair with a book and there was something they didn't understand, some amount of effort would be involved in laying the book aside and going off to look at some other piece of information. And so the reader would have to have quite a strong motive for going off. That isn't true for virtually any kind of information consumption anymore. Even the reader sitting in their chair with a book, a physical book in their hand, has a phone in their pocket where they can go on the web instantly. Nothing holds the reader in your content anymore except if that content is fulfilling their immediate task-driven need. And John Carroll anticipated this. He said, escaping the problems and providing for material to be sensibly read in order necessitates a different approach to organizing instruction. It requires a high degree of modularity, a structure of small, self-contained units. Now we've all heard about the idea of topic-based writing and of creating small, self-contained units. The problem is, in many cases, that message has not been interpreted in a way that really creates content that works the way users need it to work. And so we very often find content that is in very small self-contained units, but at least self-contained in the sense that grammatically a unit, they exist on an individual page, but do they work? Well, here we have an example of a topic called creating overrides. And the entire text of this topic is sometimes it is necessary to create overrides or customizations in underlying ePublisher files. If you cannot create overrides using ePublisher 2.11.4 or earlier, make sure you override copies of the installation files in the targets override folder, the formats override folder for your project. And that's it. That's all it tells you. Now if I open this topic up, you can see in this version on the web that it is in fact embedded within a table of contents, and that one could, by going up and down the table of contents, find maybe the beginning or end of this thread and wrap some context around this and find information that you can actually act on. But this is not, for purposes of the reader, a self-contained unit that they can act on individually. Another very common thing you'll find is that pages, you will jump into the middle of something. Here we have a page from a documentation set. You can see again that we have a table of contents here. So this is whether it was developed as a topic in some sense or not. It doesn't really work as page one for the user, because as you can probably make out, it begins by saying after you have imported all the data you need. So this is a stage in some workflow. This is not actually page one. It assumes that you're somewhere in a topic sequence. And gold-ribbon readers coming in almost at random, not going to find that they're in the right place. They've been pushed back here, as with the previous example. They've been pushed back into the world of the predefined sequence that John Carroll, even back in the 80s, showed us does not work for people. So what is happening today is that an awful lot of technical communication is being placed on the web, but it is not web-like content. Putting up a PDF of what used to be your manual, putting up the tri-pane help system that used to be captive within your application, does not create web-like content. Native web content just does not look like this. There is a sense in which the format of a tri-pane help system with navigation and table of contents at the top and the left-hand side respectively does look superficially like the design of many websites. You do have a navigation bar at the top of many websites. But what you have in the left-hand column, it may be navigational, but it's site navigation. It's not a table of contents, fully expandable. You can click everything open. That doesn't happen anywhere except in technical communication, where tri-pane help systems have been migrated to the web. And these systems are still, by and large, sequential. Native web content is not sequential. And one of the key things that we know today about how readers behave on the web is that they don't stick to one site. They don't just hop around within your content. They hop around the whole web. This is a process called information foraging. Information foraging was a pattern of behavior that people studying how people read on the web discovered. This research was done about 10 years ago now at Xerox PARC. What they did was look at the patterns by which people move through content on the web and looked for other patterns that were similar. And what they found was that the way people search for content, in fact, the closest match to that pattern is the way wild animals search for food in the wild. So these bears in this illustration are foraging for food, and it turns out that we forage for information using very much the same pattern. Now, what is at the heart of the information foraging pattern is a desire to maximize the number of calories that you take in and minimize the number of calories that you expend. So foraging grounds are thought of as in consisting of patches. There are patches of food here and there. And how much time an animal will spend hunting out the last bit of food in one particular patch depends on how close the next patch is and how much food there is in that patch. So an animal that has only one patch will hunt it out completely. This is like the person sitting in their chair with the book. Because they only have one book, they will tend to read it completely because moving to another book is expensive. But if there's lots and lots of information patches, lots and lots of foraging ground for the animal, they won't hunt out individual patches. They'll move on and take the low-hanging fruit, the animals that are easy to catch in each of the different patches. And Jacob Nielsen explained the consequences of this for information foraging, which is that the better search engines get at highlighting quality sites, the less time users will spend on any one site. They will move around from one site to another. They will leave your site faster. They will also come to your site faster. Another thing that happens is that when food is scarce, the animal will try and systematically gain as much as they can. But if you're in an environment that's abundant in food, you just snack when you're hungry. So Nielsen showed that the same thing applied. The growth of always-on broadband connections also encourages the trend towards shorter visits. If with dial-up connections, getting to the internet was somewhat difficult, this was written in 2003 when this was still an issue, users mainly do information seeking in big time chunks. When you have always-on connections, which of course we all do today, this encourages information snacking where users go online mainly briefly looking for quick answers. So this means that people are going to be coming to your information set more often for shorter periods of time. Dive in, get one thing, leave. They're not going to have any patience to sit through anything long or difficult or demanding. They want to get straight to the good stuff. And a key part of getting to the good stuff is the idea of information scent. The key concept in information foraging essentially is information scent. Does your content smell like the information that the user needs? Because content that does not smell right is simply not going to be read, and readers will quickly depart following a new information scent. So establishing a strong information scent is now the absolute key to getting readers to come and use your content. Traditionally, information architecture has been something we've done top-down, the table of contents, organization from the top. And the information scent was largely carried through the top-down mechanism, the table of contents. That was where the information scent was supposed to be. It generally was not actually contained in the content. And individual pages often have very poor information scent. There is a promise in the table of contents that this is where you will find stuff, but when you actually get there, the scent can often be quite poor. This doesn't work anymore. We need to have each individual page have its own information scent. We have culturally really a long cultural tradition of trying to organize information top-down. This is from Diderot's Encyclopedia. All of the major encyclopedists of the early period of the 18th century, when this was a very big thing, try to organize their encyclopedias from the top down using a map of the system of human knowledge or some such thing. And this attempt to create a top-down map of all human knowledge kind of goes all the way through to the Dewey Decimal System. And it basically doesn't work. You can't get any agreement on what the hierarchy should be, and people can't find things in the hierarchy. And for a long time we said, well, we need to improve it, and it just hasn't worked. And we can see that by the 20th century, encyclopedias stopped trying to be organized according to a map of human knowledge, and they were organized alphabetically. And in the 21st century, even alphabetical ordering is gone. When you use Wikipedia today, you use it by search, you use it by following links within the articles. There is no order to it at all. Unfortunately, we've, in many cases, tried to continue top-down organization while at the same time assembling more and more content in a single portal. And this has led to the rise of what I call the Frankenbook. So now you have a help system that has a single table of contents which consists of dozens, sometimes hundreds of books, all listed, often not in any particular order, no consistency between, in terms of what you can find where. Trying to navigate this from the top down, just hopeless, just never going to work. Far, far too big. So what we're discovering is that top-down organization has severe limits. The more content we put online, or the more content we assemble in any one place, the harder it is to do a top-down organization that works. And we find that you have a variety of different things. They don't all fit neatly under the same categories. Complexity of relationships, things that are related to each other in more than one way, tend to get separated from each other within a hierarchy because it only emphasizes one way to be connected. So we end up in a situation where you collect enough stuff and it turns out, in David Weinberger's phrase, that everything is miscellaneous. There are places top-down works. It works where the readers do want a curriculum. It works with highly intuitive classifications. In the book I give an example from used car sites, which use a classification scheme that makes immediate sense to all car buyers. It works where you have a natural hierarchy. So if you're trying to locate a street within a city, within a country, this works. And canonical hierarchies, things like the classification of plants and animals, work for those who know them. Top-down fails when readers are goal-directed. It fails when classifications are unfamiliar. It fails when hierarchies are unnatural, when the relationships that matter are irregular, and that is often the case in technical communication, particularly because it is exactly where the relationships are irregular that people tend to have difficulty and need help. And it fails when there's just too much stuff. So goal-directed readers follow an information set. They make their own individual goal-driven journey through a web of information. Our content is probably only one of the resources that they will visit on that journey. When they enter content at the bottom. And if they stay in our content, it is because they are navigating within it from the bottom up. You can see this very clearly in any Wikipedia article you care to look at. If you were interested in the Manickawagan critter, which is a geological feature that kind of looks like an eyeball on the North American continent, you will see that it locates itself on all kinds of different axes. It's an impact crater located on Earth. It's in a particular municipality, in a particular region of a particular province of a particular country. It is thought to be blamed for an extinction event. It occurred in a particular period of time, and if we went on, we would find that it's a reservoir, all these things, and all of them are linked. depending on where your interests took you as you were reading this article, you would have links to follow, and that is how you would navigate. That's how we navigate when we move around resources like YouTube, and how we move around Wikipedia all the time. We navigate from the bottom up. When we do that, we are dealing with a situation where each page is a hub of its local subject space. We're now in spaces that are far too big to look at from the top down, and so we deal in local relationships that exist in the bottom up. This is not just about links. Links are an important part of that architecture, but it also matters what the nodes of that network are. The nodes of the network have to work reliably. They have to have good information sent. They have to quickly meet the user's need, and they have to be correctly connected. So for this sort of thing to work successfully, you need every page to be page 1. In the book, I outline 7 key characteristics of every page's page 1 topics. The first is that they be self-contained, which essentially means that they should be without any kind of sequential dependency. They shouldn't assume that the reader has read something else before. They shouldn't instruct them to go read something else before. They shouldn't instruct them to go read something else afterwards. They should work as a unit. That doesn't mean that the reader will not need to go anywhere else. As we saw, readers will probably move around and use several resources. And it is entirely appropriate that they should, and that we should accommodate them doing so. But each individual piece should fill a specific and limited purpose, which is the second characteristic. So here we want to make sure that each one of our pages does one thing, does it really well. Each individual, every page's page 1 topic must establish its own context. And that means its context in the world. Context in your information set, context in your table of contents does not interest the reader. That's one of the fundamental sayings of content strategy today is the reader does not care how your company is organized. By the same token, the reader does not care how your information set is organized. They are not using your information set. They are using information. They are using the web. And they don't care how your little bit of it is organized. They just want to move around locally as they need to. One of the really interesting things that we see, and I would invite you to go to Wikipedia and check this out, is that when you start to write content that serves a specific and limited purpose, short pieces that serve specific, well-defined, limited purposes, they naturally start to conform to the same type. The same need drives the same information. The best information patterns tend to bubble up to the surface and be imitated by others. So in the book, I do go through a number of examples of this, showing that once information gets to be in this form, it naturally starts to coalesce into types. And so conforming to a type is a really important part of an every page's page 1 topic. And along with establishing context, conforming to type is a key to a good information set. The next characteristic is that a topic assumes the reader is qualified. This will seem very contrarian to some, because we've taken the approach in many of the manuals of not assuming that the reader is qualified and kind of building them up and almost establishing a curriculum that builds them up in a deliberate manner. We know that people will not use the material in that fashion. They will be goal-directed. They will go straight to the piece they want and expect to be able to understand it. So they are wanting something that assumes that they're ready to do this. Sometimes they will discover that they're not. And those people who are not actually ready will need to go and read other material to get ready. We don't put that into the topic, because if we do, it gets to be big and ugly, and then it loses its information scent, and it's unsatisfying to the reader who wants to go straight to the point. And so we have to leave it to other topics to qualify the reader if they need it. Every page 1 topics stay on one level. They don't change levels because they leave it up to the reader to decide when do they want the big picture, when do they want an example. We don't design curriculums with our idea of when you should do that. We know people have different learning styles, and so different people want the example at different times and want the high-level concepts at different times. So we let the reader choose that and keep each individual topic on its own level. And the final characteristic is that every page's page 1 topics link richly along lines of subject affinity. Subject affinity is a way of saying that the link is based on the subject that the text is referring to. And as we'll see a little later, that's actually going to really tie back into something that Joe is going to talk about regarding taxonomy. So again, I've treated very briefly of the ideas here that are in the book. The first half of the book is really spent in exploring this change in reader behavior that we've been seeing, and the second half goes through what do we need to do to create topics that really work in a self-contained way for the reader, and to create an architecture which supports readers operating in a goal-directed fashion and moving around through the content in the way that suits them at the moment, and creating individual pieces of content that work best when the reader is behaving in that way. So I'll throw my contact information up just quickly there. We can come back to that at the end, but I'll just leave it there while Joe takes the presentation back, and he is then going to talk about how you can implement this in SuiteShare.
Thanks very much, Mark. It was very interesting. And a lot of the concepts that you've been talking about, a lot of the theory and the background, is provides a perfect entry point to what we're going to be talking about now. Mark was talking about the idea of finding information and finding the correct information about the information sent. And we're going to be talking about now is the idea that most of us on the call, I think, are involved with technical documentation or product information of different types, and folks are coming to our site for a particular reason. They're looking for there are particular types of people and they're with certain roles, and they're coming in. They have a certain goal in mind. And so what we're going to be talking about is how we can, enable them to use their information sent, as Mark described, to quickly hunt down the relevant content. So, back not so long ago, we used to talk about contextual or context-sensitive help. You're sitting on a particular place in the software, and you click on a button, you get the topic of information that's most relevant to what you need to do there. And now we're going to, now we're talking more of the level of the contextual relevance of understanding not just where I am in the software, but who's coming to the site, who's the reader, what their role is. Are they a technician? Are they a partner? Are they an end user of our product? Are they a partner of some sort? Or are they a prospective customer? Understanding what security profile they have and their proficiency level, maybe their geographical location makes a difference. And then understanding what they're trying to accomplish. As I mentioned, people are coming to our sites to accomplish a certain goal. We like our documentation and our information, but not very many people are strolling through our site in order to to be entertained. So the idea is understanding what they're trying to accomplish. Are they getting some training? Do they need to do some kind of installation or configuration on their product? They're doing maintenance. They're purchasing something. Understanding what kind of equipment they're operating. Protocols or interfaces. All this information that helps drive and helps the customer or the person coming to our site use their information sent to quickly hunt down the relevant content. So I'd like to make a couple of illustrations here. For example, here's an illustration of field service people, field service technicians who are out trying to fix one of our products or service it. So, I'm a service engineer. I need to install a particular flow meter device using a certain protocol. Okay, I have a particular device manager, a certain communicator. Basically, when the equipment that I'm using is very particular, and I don't have any access to information when I'm going to get on site. So I want to be able to gather the most updated information that I need right now in order to perform my goal. Okay, and that information maybe have come from multiple books. I mean, the reality situation of a lot of us are still producing hierarchical books, manuals, and so the information may be coming from a lot of different places. Maybe from a manual, maybe from support information that was developed by a support person in-house. It could be a video. So let me download that information and put it into my tablet before I go on site. Once I get on site, I figure out how to solve a tricky problem. I take some pictures with my phone. I take a short video to the problem. And when I get online, I want to be able to write up another topic, another piece of information describing exactly my context and what I was able to do, and share that information with others in my organization or outside. Okay, so we talked. Mark built a good case that we're all using search. A lot of us are using search more and more. But in our context, we want to figure out a way to, again, help the person drive down the most the most relevant content as quickly as possible. So there's a couple of different ways we can categorize the content. We can be using metadata, which a lot of us are familiar with, which is basically stamping the content or each topic or each piece of information with information about what it is. Another way of doing it is using a taxonomy or a classification. And in this case, we're not talking about a hierarchy of content like Mark was talking about, where we're organizing our content into a table of contents. We're talking about organizing in an organized way how we describe our content, the subject matter that our content is describing. Once we build a hierarchy of that type of information, of subject matter using a taxonomy, then we can classify or classify the content, each topic, each video, each how-to article, each safety information, whatever it is, and apply that to our content. Okay, so taxonomy classification, as I mentioned, is two steps. One is to define that taxonomy. There's different standards that you can use. DITA has a standard. For some of those of us who are using DITA as a way of defining a taxonomy using a subject scheme. And you can also define relationships between the subjects. For example, a product or a product version can be a subject. A platform or an operating system can be a subject. A role, a audience role might be a subject. A profile might be, or a security profile might be a subject. So you can make relationships between the subjects and say, okay, a certain role of user will have a certain security profile, or a certain type of product will be used on a certain operating system platform. Okay, and defining these relationships between the subject matter, again, helps us to later on to build a platform that allow the customer to use that sense of theirs to drill down very, very quickly to find the information they need. Now, the interesting thing about classification of the content is that it's not like metadata. Metadata requires us to actually own the content and stamp it in a way that, with information about it. Very often the metadata is stored inside the content itself, whether it's XML or as a Word file or whatever you have. Classification involves categorizing the content outside the content itself, so that you can actually categorize or classify content that you don't even own. So if you're providing a portal to your customers or to your users, and you want to provide information from other parts of your organization or maybe even other companies that you don't necessarily own, using classification scheme, you can actually classify and create a methodology or create a way for people to get to that content in the way that you know that they're going to need to be able to find that. Categorization can happen, or classification can happen in many ways. Often we do it ourselves, either using a content management system. For example, SharePoint and other content management systems have ways of building taxonomies and classifying content. systems such as Salesforce or Jive, which is a system for communities. Other types of delivery platforms out there, or way that we build content, also have ways of tagging content in a certain way. And the idea of creating those tags in a standardized way that reaches them across all the different silos of information, that's really what we're trying to get at. There's also tools that allow you to automatically classify content. It's not often perfect, but it often will get you a large way there of classifying content, again, content you may not even own, in a way that can be more easily accessible. Okay, so really talking about taking a leap to a new paradigm from a tool point of view. We're talking about providing a platform to provide a variety of different content, documentation pages, or topics, videos, articles that were created by engineers, by SMEs, by our customers, safety information, data sheets, marketing material, all kinds of information that we provide on our portal these days. Being able to provide a unified way of accessing that information. Contextual filtering, providing quick, goal-oriented access to that contextually relevant content. We want to find a platform that can personalize content for people, allowing people, like we saw in the example with the technicians, there may be specific concrete pieces or topics or page ones information that we need to get to, but very often we need to assemble that into some kind of a package or collection to take with us offline, or to create easier accessibility to it later on. So be able to assemble our own content on demand, to be able to render it into a PDF or an EPUB for offline access or whatever have you. Allowing audience participation, social media, the idea of allowing your audience to add content, comment on the existing content, express approval, and share your content with others. And then to be able to provide a modern user experience, which these days modern means a lot of different things, but these days modern often means creating a smooth transition between mobile and desktop. We saw before providing the ability to start a search on mobile, on a mobile device, a tablet maybe, when you get back into your office or in your home, to be able to continue that search on a laptop or desktop, and then returning back to your mobile device, bring content back on there. So this flip-flopping back and forth between different types of devices, we want to provide a smooth, consistent interface. Okay, so what I'm going to do is jump into a demo of a platform which provides this. So when we go into a web platform like this, like SuiteShare, we are able to number one, see a variety of different types of content, whether it be videos, documentation, articles, etc. We're able to see maybe new content. We're able to add content, and we're able to see our own collection of content, which we'll come back to later. But Mark mentioned that a lot of us are using searches, and that's what many of us do. So many of us will just go to a search box and start typing, I want to configure a flow meter or something, right? Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is doing an advanced search, which is based on the taxonomy that we were speaking about before. Okay, the taxonomy, or the filtering based on the taxonomy, allows the user to get in and say, okay, you know what? I got my information set and those on. I know that I'm working on a flow meter today. I know I need to do an installation. I know I'm using this protocol. Find me all the content that's relevant. Okay, and when they hit that search button, it's already paring down from thousands of topics down to a very small, limited set of content that they need in an interface that people are used to looking at today. Many of us are used to, if you do a search for contextual relevance, you'll see web marketers talking about how to understand who the customer is, and what they're trying to buy. And often you'll see these consumer websites which have a faceted search on the left where they're able to narrow down the list of features of what they're trying to sell them. Okay, what we're trying to do is apply the same concept and allow people to whittle down the content they need piece by piece to find what they need very quickly, and giving them, with these numbers, giving them an indication of how much content there is, and allow them to whittle down so they must find the most relevant thing. So I'm going to pare down on the search for a second, get a slightly larger search set. Now, once I get to the topic or the search result, so very often we're used to clicking on a search result and diving into a PDF or diving into a large manual of a help system. Okay, if we already know what we're looking for, then and we have our information set and those on, then we want to be able to just click on that link and view the content right there on the screen. And exactly what this platform does. If we're already providing our content on a topic level using topic architecture, so we want to have a system that will take advantage of that. So when I click on the button on the link, I'm not jumping to somewhere else. I stay right on the search screen. I'm able to read the link, read the content, okay, and either be done with it or be able to close it and go into another topic and read it. And then if I want, I can go and fine-tune my search at any time, okay, and move from there. Now, we talked about the idea of providing different types of content, whether it be how-to articles or videos. So for example, if I want to view videos or I want to do a search or a filter that includes videos, the same thing. I want to be able to find the videos and display that on my screen and view that content the same way that I would view any other type of content, not jumping me to some other site. So it provides me a nice unified experience of finding different types of content within an easy to find, filterable context that we're used to. Now, once I find content, we talked about the idea of adding that to a collection, right? So let's say I'm going offline. I want to be able to, or I want to be able to get a collection and view it on my mobile device, whether if I'm doing a particular job. So I can always add this content to my own particular collection, whether it be a topic of information, a product information, or a how-to article or a video. I can add that to my topic, my document, and from there I can go and I can use it either as a list of quick links, or I can publish into a PDF or an ebook and download it to my phone or my tablet. Okay. So SuiteShare platform, I think very much one of the reasons why we're really excited to have Mark join us today is the idea that Mark really provides a background of what the behaviors and why a platform that like SuiteShare is able to really drive you to the information that's the most relevant as quickly as possible, using the concepts that Mark was talking about. Okay, at this point I'm going to go back to Mark, who's going to sum up the last slide about taxonomy.
Thanks, Joe. So yes, I mentioned earlier the idea of links being based on what I referred to as subject affinities. That is, topic A mentions a subject, and the link goes to topic B that is on that subject, or possibly to a link of several topics that are related to that subject. So the linking is going subject to subject. You're not making a citation of another work. You're linking to more information on the subject. And those kinds of links are really key to enabling the reader who has gone down initially through whatever search mechanism they have, and they're there, to move on. What's interesting is that the same taxonomy that drives the sort of the classification that Joe was talking about, which assists the user coming in initially, it is exactly the same taxonomy, the same terms, the same classes of information that occur throughout the content. And so what you find is that any given topic is in fact located at the intersection of multiple categories. So a bottom-up linking architecture is based on the same idea of taxonomy, terms in categories. And what ideally you want to do to provide for the reader who is, following their nose. And taxonomy done well is about providing a strong scent. You're going to find that the exact same taxonomies are running both as a classification scheme outside the content and as a linking scheme inside the content. And if you can achieve that in your content, you're going to get a very closely integrated set of navigational tools that are really going to help the user keep track of things by following the information sent both up and down and sideways and wherever they need to go next. The same information sent is going to be expressed in the same ways, and that's going to be a very powerful, consistent message.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mark. So thanks very much, Mark, for joining us. I think I learned a lot. I always learn a lot when I listen to Mark, and providing a really good context for for us. I think a lot of us in the call are like I mentioned before, are already using topic-based architectures. And I hear a lot of people. I spoke to a customer recently who said, you know what, we started it a number of years ago, and we had a dream of being able to do a lot of topic-based delivery, but we kind of get sucked into the let's do data, and then we need a PDF and we need the help, and we got sucked into the same old thing we've been doing before. I think now we're seeing the platforms and the technology that's available now to really fulfill the dream of a lot of the effort and the investment we've been doing in topic-based architecture. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I'll turn it over to Herzl.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark and Joe, for a really very interesting and informative webinar. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We hope that you found this the webinar enjoyable as well as informative. If you found this helpful, please take a moment to follow us on LinkedIn, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Take care and good afternoon.